Can watch it from there.
More chairs. We're bringing in couches.
Under the weather a bit.
We're going to be auctioning off the sofa chair up here in just a moment. That's the best seat in the house. Yeah, you better grab it quick.
You gonna stand up and talk?
When I get through, I'm gonna give you the handheld and then start getting
Okay.
requests from the audience.
Yeah,
Then you can give it back to me and I'll,
absolutely. Yeah, as soon as I walk back out of there,
unless you want to run the audience.
not a chance.
Or we can let the representative run the audience.
Hey, I'm always, that's me. That's like the old job back. You know what I think I'll do is I'll do a quick welcome. I'll introduce these guys, and then I'll throw it to you, and I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, introduce who's up
I'm
here.
gonna replace Olson with me in that. Like,
Okay, that's good.
just crossing this out and kind of moving it up here.
Make him do the Pledge of
Okay.
Allegiance too.
They're all here to see you, Tim.
Yeah.
Hey, Stan.
Yeah. Rails to trails.
There's three real nice, comfortable seats right up front here. Come on up.
Come on, Greg. Right here, Greg.
Come on down.
We saved a sofa chair for you. Mr. Leo.
It wasn't intentional though.
Oh, and Rachel. I got you. I saved it just for you. Absolutely. Only the best for Aurora. Nearby. Well, I think we're ready. We ready? Yeah, there's a few folks still, but there are a few stragglers. All right.
I think we're ready to get this thing going. Well, holy moly, thank you. Wow. Had no idea what we might end up with tonight, and this is really exciting and fantastic, and I'm looking forward to bringing you as much information as we can. But what I would like to do, because Representative Neerman is here as my guest, he would cause me great heartburn if I didn't do this. Not that I wouldn't anyway, but he reminded me. So I would like to stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Okay, let me work my way down the table here and introduce who's here tonight, and then we're going to get going with our agenda for tonight. At the far end of the table, Dave Hageberg, who is the chair of the committee on the Newburgh-Dundee bypass agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay. Next to him is a newly elected representative from over there,
The other half of the bypass.
the other half of the bypass, from District 24, is Representative Ron Noble. Then over there, some further over there, is District 23, and that's Representative Mike Neerman. And next to me here from the Oregon Department of Transportation, your name confuses me because in your emails it says James, but you go by Tim.
I do.
Okay. Well, my name was Robert, but I choose Bill. Anyway, I'm sorry. Tim Potter from the Oregon Department of Transportation. I really appreciate him being here tonight. And of course, we're joined by the mayor, Bob Andrews. And Mayor Andrews, would you please let us know what else is going on?
A little bit of homework here. Well, thank you, Representative Post. I sincerely appreciate it, and I welcome you, Representative Neerman, Representative Noble, Mr. Potter, whichever it is. And Dave, thanks for joining us up here. We appreciate it very much. And we thank you all for your interest, all of you, our table, all of you, for your interest in the Newburgh-Dundee bypass and for its continued progress towards completion. I'd like to introduce some other elected officials. Fortunately, they do not outnumber the rest of you, so thank you all for coming. But I would like to introduce Commissioner Stan Primozic. If you'd raise your hand or raise your body, either way. Commissioner Mary Sterrett, Commissioner Rick Olson, Mayor Scott Hill from McMinnville, Mayor Dave Russ from Dundee, in the back. Councilor Scott Essen from Newburgh. Councilor Denise Bacon from Newburgh.
Just way in the back.
Way back there. Councilor Stephen McKinney, Newburgh Councilor. And I believe I saw Councilor Ted Crawford from Dundee. There we are. Welcome. We appreciate it very much. It's imperative that the bypass be completed. And that's the message that I want to convey. All 11 miles from the base of Rex Hill on 99W to Highway 18, just this side of Dayton. The citizens of Newburgh want to get their historic downtown back, returning the streets to the people. The city of Newburgh, using a TMG, Transportation Management Growth Grant from ODOT, has completed its initial study and the draft plan for the revitalization of the downtown of Newburgh upon the completion of the first phase. However, to fully effect that revitalization and to realize the full value of that TGM grant, the full bypass needs to be completed. Commerce and the economic development will continue to be inhibited without the fully completed bypass. In addition to congestion, there's an extreme threat to our pedestrians, to our pedestrian safety, especially when they attempt to cross Newburgh's downtown streets. We have experienced an unacceptable increase in our traffic on our residential streets adjacent to 99W because of motorists that are diverting to the residential streets to avoid the congestion on 99W. And the unacceptable level of congestion that we are experiencing has produced a threatening level of air and noise pollution that create a deteriorating situation for our downtown and adjacent areas of Newburgh. The air pollution continues hydrocarbons and all sorts of particulates that are affecting the quality of air we have to breathe and is depositing unacceptable levels of silt and filth on the businesses, offices, and homes in Newburgh. Again, we stress we need to complete the bypass. Again, I thank you all very much for being here this evening, and I thank the representatives, all three, but especially Representative Post, for being here and hosting tonight's meeting. With that, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate that and take your words to heart. And hopefully tonight we give you some information to kind of let you know where we are. I'm not the expert on this, and that's why I brought in experts. I always like to make myself look better by bringing in smarter people than me. But I want to tell you real quick, one of my guests was going to be Representative Andy Olson, who's from Albany, District 15. He is one of the members of the Commission of Transportation and Modernization. They began touring the state last year, I believe it was in June. And I wanted him here for that reason, because he's on that committee, and so he's the one that's been traveling, he and that committee have been traveling around the state, having things like this over and over and over and over again, asking people, what do you want in transportation? What's going on? So he was going to come and give a presentation. Unfortunately, he had a major back issue that came up out of nowhere, and he had to go to urgent care this morning. And so I'm praying for him and hope that you'll pray for his recovery, because we start Wednesday in the session, and we need Representative Olson there with his guidance. So what I have are his notes on what he heard and what he saw as he was traveling around the state. So I'm just going to read from them so that you'll know where we are on transportation in general in Oregon, and then specifically for the bypass. Again, the Transportation and Modernization Commission began touring the state in June last year. The committee is made up of 7 members from the Senate and 7 from the House. The co-chairs are Senator Lee Byer of Eugene and Representative Kathy McEwen of Coos Bay, and then Representative Cliff Bentz and Senator Brian Boquist are the co-vice chairs. The problem with the transportation package, no matter where they went, was of course funding, and that's an issue that we'll be talking about. At this point, because of the one party holds a majority in both the House and the Senate, but not the 60% majority that they need to pass a bill to raise revenue, Republican votes will be necessary for any transportation package. Possible components of this package. Mega projects have been identified. Mega projects. How will state taxes and fees be allocated? How will those projects be prioritized? How will the package be funding? Does that include gas tax increases, tolling, targeted tax and fee increases? Those were all things that have been discussed as they've been traveling around the state. Currently, there are several mega projects. For instance, expansion to 6 lanes on I-5 between Eugene and Salem. Expansion of I-205, including the Abernathy Bridge near Oregon City, to 6 lanes. There are others that are included, and he wanted to make sure I stressed, including the Newburgh-Dundee bypass. So that's been identified as a mega project. One of the fundings they talked about, just if you want to talk about a gas tax for a moment, I want to give you a number. If we increase the price of gas by 1 cent per gallon, that yields $25 million. Okay, so hold that number, $25 million, for just a moment. While they were touring the state last year, the community leaders in the Ontario area said they would support a 10-cent increase. Those in Eugene said 25 cents. A city councilman, and he doesn't tell me what city, I wish I knew, in the Willamette Valley said a 50-cent increase. No offense to Tim, but our concern from listening to what we heard around the state was we want to make sure, no matter what we do, that the Oregon Department of Transportation uses the funds very responsibly and eliminates any waste. If we look at an allocation, 50% of all funds raised by transportation taxes and fees go to ODOT. 30% would go to the county, 20% goes to the cities, and that's based on population. So, of course, raising taxes, nobody likes that, well, except for the one fellow in the Willamette Valley. Apparently he's okay with that. But raising taxes is not very popular. Additional pressures make raising the gas tax even less palatable. And the one that we've talked about many times, I have, and I know some of the other guys have, is the low carbon fuel standard. Just so you understand what that is for a moment, the low carbon fuel standard requires distributors to reduce the carbon content of vehicle fuels by 10% over the next decade. The anticipated cost per gallon of gas is anywhere between 4 to 19 cents per gallon. There is also in plan a cap and trade program for carbon emissions. That's an issue we need to worry about. And that could drive, again, this comes from the state, this may drive fuel costs by another 7 cents. So he wrote some food for thought. The average Oregonian drives 12,000 miles per year and gets about 21 miles per gallon. That equates to each Oregonian paying an average of $153 a year in gas tax right now. Developing the Dundee bypass will save lives, increase economy to the communities, and help reduce carbon emissions. That we know. Now, I have some numbers that I'll probably have Tim elaborate on a little bit more in just a moment, so I'm going to skip past that. But just a quick one. The cost of the numbers, or the cost of the bypass, this was just one portion, 86 to 111 million. I believe it's 300 million now, isn't it? Can somebody attest to that? If we did the whole thing from one end to the other?
That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay, so I'm going to let Dave talk about that. Here's something, and this did come from ODOT this morning. The annual average daily traffic at the following locations: Rex Hill north of Newburgh, 32,400. At Dundee, 25,000. At the Dayton Split at 18, 12,400. So on any given day, traffic is crawling through Dundee, pushing emissions into the air. And I told you about the carbon emissions, cap and trade on carbon, and the low carbon fuel standard. What I want to slip to next before I pass the mic is this. In the last, today's the 30th, in the last 4 days, there have been 3 editorials from 3 of Oregon's major newspapers. The Eugene Register-Guard, the Bend Bulletin, and the Oregonian, that all basically wrote the same thing. We need to have a transportation package. But the low carbon fuel standard is scaring us for a lot of reasons. And that's why I wanted to give you some of this information that's right out of these editorials. These are newspaper editorials. These are not me giving you my opinion, though I have to agree with what's being said. For instance, the Bend Bulletin said on Friday, Oregon's low carbon fuel standard won't make any measurable difference in global warming. What it will do is cost Oregon drivers money. The state estimates, as I said, between 4 and 19 cents per gallon. What we don't know is, or what we do know, but what we don't like is that money is not going to Oregon industries. It's going to out-of-state petroleum industries. It's not helping. It's not going to build bridges. It's not going to build a Newburgh-Dundee bypass. It's money that's going to out-of-state corporations to increase their bottom line because they're the ones that make this new blended fuel, create the blending of the fuel. But regardless of which side is right on this, the cost will be hidden from us who have to pay for it because it's a transparent gas tax. Right now, the state's gas tax is about 30 cents per gallon. The implementation of the low carbon fuel standard will simply drive up the cost of fuel itself. Out of sight, out of mind. Clean fuels regulations are about creating green goodness. We all like that. The aim is to reduce the carbon intensity of the fuels that people use. Carbon intensity is a measure of the pollution created getting fuel to a consumer's gas tank and using it. Biodiesel is a very good fuel. It has a carbon score of 18.12. The DEQ says electricity comes in at 31.58, corn ethanol 69.89, regular car gasoline 97.68. The lower the number, the better for carbon. But advocates for the fuel standards say clean fuels are cheaper than the fuels they replace. It's not that simple. So again, that's the Bend Bulletin. The Eugene Register-Guard said this: the program itself is a well-meaning attempt to reduce the carbon intensity of Oregon's transportation fuels by 10% over the next decade, but it's not clear whether the program will do much to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. It's been estimated that it will increase the price of fuel from 4 cents to 19 cents. In fact, Governor Kate Brown said Thursday that thus far the program has added about a cent to the cost of a gallon of fuel. And remember that the DEQ has voted to delay enforcement of the mandates until 2018. Now, we as Republicans, all of us here, the 3 representatives are Republicans, we have said that we would love a transportation package, but we do not want to saddle our constituents with an unknown gas tax that does not go to roads, bridges, or tunnels, or airports, or anything else. But we are in favor of a gas tax, perhaps, with the right incentives, that would build something like the Newburgh-Dundee bypass. And when the Bend Bulletin and the Eugene Register-Guard and the Oregonian are saying all the same things, that we probably should put this aside for now because there is no magic bubble over Oregon protecting it from the carbon that's coming from China or California or, well, wait a minute, they fixed their problem. Nebraska, whatever it is. We can't stop it from coming in. Why are we paying for this through our fuels? The last point that I want to make, that this is what scares me the most, and that is whatever you might think about President Trump, he has said that he wants to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. Roads, bridges, airports, tunnels, etc., etc. The Newburgh-Dundee bypass is in that list, except it just came off the list because Oregon is a sanctuary state. You can like that or hate that. I'm not asking for that. What I'm saying is it's the reality of where we are today. Oregon has just been crossed off the list of getting that money. So we have to be concerned when we look at this project, wow, how's it going to be paid for? Because we need money from the federal government. We're not going to be able to do this alone as a state. we need money from the federal government. So we do need to start thinking about widening how we go about doing this. So that's what I wanted to present to you. It's what Representative Olson has found out in traveling around the state. But most important, as I said, all of those editorials, that wasn't Fox News. Those were Oregon newspapers giving us these editorials. The low carbon fuel standard may hurt a project like this. So I want us to clearly understand that this is not going to happen unless other things happen and fall into place first. So let me turn it now to, let's see, because he couldn't be here, I crossed off Representative Olson. Representative Neerman, again from House District 23, you know, he's got a dog in his fight too, and he wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Thanks, Bill. So welcome everybody tonight. So I'm Mike Neerman from House District 23, which is Dundee and Amity, and then on south to Dallas and Polk County and those regions there. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I echo everything Bill said, and I agree with everything he said. Even I'll take it a step farther on we're kind of off topic a little bit on the sanctuary cities thing. I was the chief petitioner of a ballot measure to repeal that law, which is right now stuck in the Department of Justice. So I'm doing my part to help with some of those things. One of the things that's there's not that much appetite, at least in me, for increase in the gas tax, although I'm open to that. But one of the things that's coming is we're working towards changing the way that we tax gasoline, so we no longer, because we have cars that run on different things now. So we have electric cars and cars that run partly on electricity and partly on gas, cars that don't use any gas and don't pay any of the road tax or whatever. And so we're kind of we're on the verge of doing that. I'm a politician. I'm going to lie to you here. I was going to say I'm part of the pilot project for the vehicle mile tax, where they put the little GPS chip on your car there. But I just lied to you. I'm not a part of that pilot project. I put that on my wife's car. But anyway, I drive her car sometimes. So. But anyway, so but the point is, and whether you like that or don't like that, or you think we're going in the right direction or not, we need to straighten out the way that we collect gas taxes. And so I want to see how that's going to be done, if that's going to be revenue neutral or revenue positive or whatever, before we before I have a lot of appetite for a gas tax. So I'd like to see this project get done too. I think this is a necessary project for all the reasons that Mayor Andrews said. It's a great project, and we need to drag it across the finish line. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on that, and I'll yield the balance of my time to Representative Noble.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, Ron Noble is my name. I'm from District 24, which is really the half of the bypass that is not being built right now. And I'm going to echo what Mayor Adams said. One, thank you all for being here. It's important that we have a good showing and that we can show people that this is important to our region. I live in McMinnville, and I can't help but think what impact the bypass of Highway 18 had on McMinnville's downtown. So when we talk about revitalizing downtown Newburgh and Dundee, I think it's a big deal. But it's not just that, because we have industry and agriculture that can't get product out. And so this is not just a nice downtown. This is vital to the economy of Yamhill County and the Yamhill Valley, and tourism, both in Newburgh and all the way through the Yamhill Valley. I am committed to figuring out and doing my part to make sure that this whole thing gets done. We'll need to do it in phases, but I want to figure out a way that the whole thing gets done. That's really all I have to say tonight, because I know we have some experts specifically on the bypass that I'd like to hear from. So thank you again for all of you for coming. Thank you, Representative Post, for coordinating all this, and I appreciate being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Again, Rep. Neerman and Noble. I want to turn it over now to Tim Potter from ODOT, and he's the one who brought the wonderful maps, and I appreciate that. So, Tim, take it away.
I will. I'm going to actually, is this working?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually point at the map. So what I want to talk about briefly is I'm going to give you just a quick update on what we're building right now, and then I'm going to go to kind of what the overall vision is back to what the fully approved corridor is.
So right now, we're building what has been called Phase 1 of the bypass. That was paid for with the Jobs and Transportation Act out of 2009. About, all in, this portion of the project is about $250 million. What we've got under construction right now is just outside of Dundee. I'm sure seen what's been euphemistically called the fish hook, and the bridge up over the railroad at 99. And we let this project in separate, smaller contracts. The goal was, because it was the Jobs and Transportation Act, to try and get this into pieces that could be built by Oregon contractors. So we separated into three major contracts that were of a size that the bigger Oregon contractors could buy. And that was highly successful. All three phases are being built by contractors that actually are home here in the valley. So, and virtually all the jobs, all the subcontractors are Oregon contractors. It really worked out well from that regard. The west end, or the southwest end, I guess, up to about Chehalem Creek, or just over Chehalem Creek, is about 85% done. Most of that is where we've got some plantings that we're doing, and there's some railing on the bridges that needs to be finished up, and some detail work. But most of that end is complete. The east end from, again, Chehalem Creek, or the crossing there, on over to Oregon 219, obviously that's the south part of Newburgh. There's a lot of work still going on. We've got two major bridges that are being, right now, either poured, or pieces of it being poured, or formwork being removed or put on. So over the next couple of months, these two major bridges, one is Winooski that will go up and over the bypass, and the other one is the bridge that goes over Hess Creek and kind of gets below the south end of the airport. Those two bridges will be complete probably about midsummer. And then, so then they'll start doing the major road work to then pave it probably in, I would guess, this half of the real paving will start probably mid-August. The goal for the overall thing, well, let me talk about Springbrook a little bit. Springbrook Road, we've got a heck of a lot of work. We've got to make that wider. Over the next couple of weeks, we've got Fernwood, we've got a major drainage line that has to be installed down Fernwood Road. So you'll see some closures down there. And then we'll start in pieces closing portions for probably three or 4 weeks at a time as we work our way up towards 99 to make that a little wider. We've also talked to the contractor the possibility of staying one-lane flagged through portions of that and working mostly the east side. But at some point, we're going to have to close big pieces of it so we can rebuild the base of that road. There's also been work up at the 99 intersection. Most of that is done. We haven't obviously done the final lift paving. We haven't cut in the new signal poles and all of that. But most of the work on 99 itself is done until we get kind of to the finishing stages, and we'll start tying that all into the final product. The overall Phase 1 of the bypass is scheduled to be open in late November. The contracts, all three contracts have the same finishing date, which is the end of November. I think they're all going to be, well, the Springbrook one is going to be tight. The east end, they're going to be made quite easily, and this one in the middle, I'm a little bit, they're going to finish, but I think really the tight one will be the Springbrook end. It's obviously just more difficult working around that traffic. These two contractors have had the luxury of working on wide open road with nobody around them. That's something that is rare in the transportation industry, that you get to build a brand new road with nobody, you're not having to work traffic around. So that kind of brings you up to speed where we're at on the current project. From a budget standpoint, we've done very well. So far, we're under budget fairly substantially. We actually took about $7.5 million and started a piece of what will be a future phase. That was to realign Winooski Road. That design work is going on now. That will bring Winooski down and tie it into 219 a little farther south from where it ties in today. Or not, excuse me, not Winooski Road, Wilsonville Road. Should have remembered that, that was some controversial stuff. So that design work's being done now, we'll finish that the summer of 2020. We also have another $10.5 million piece, again, savings out of the overall project, that we've started negotiating with folks for right-of-way, and let me get this out of the way and start talking about the big thing. We started talking to some of the landowners that own land along this corridor through here. The legislature actually directed us to take some of that money, set it aside, and start working towards protecting that right of way, because we knew that there's an appetite for development out there, and obviously it would become much more expensive if that development took place. So we hopefully are getting ahead of that curve. Now, what you see here is the overall bypass, and I think Mayor Andrews stressed it very, very well. The real relief for 99 is to build the entire bypass. Obviously, if you're just doing pieces of it, you're only taking some portion of that traffic that the whole bypass is aimed to pull off of 99. So that bypass will go from down by Dayton, right at the junction where 18 and 99 are, we call that McDougal Junction. And obviously comes up south of Dundee, south of Newburgh, and then ties in with a big interchange up near Rex Hill. Right now, phase one we've purchased the right of way along phase one, the full final width, but we're only building 2 lanes. So I think kind of the logical next step is take that 2 lanes as far as we can and then start expanding it as traffic indicates and needs for either the 4 lanes or improving the intersection. With any highway, it's the intersection points that kind of control the volume that it can handle. So once we get the 2 lanes in there, then we start looking at how does it perform and where do we need to do improvements to improve that flow, and that would be at those intersection points. Whether it's at 219 where it comes up through Newburgh, or whether it's up at Rex Hill, we need to, when we finally make that connection, how do we make it the most efficient possible? So that's the work that still needs to be done. I've heard numbers bandied about of what it costs. The EIS has the kind of the overall figure. There's ways to extract, what you think needs to be done out of that. Oregon Department of Transportation literally just operates off of what the legislature asks us to do. The Jobs and Transportation Act provided the funding. They actually defined what phase 1 of the bypass needed to be. Obviously, we had input in that because it's an engineering decision, but they provided the funding and told us what piece to build. So that's been our mission since that time. We will continue along that vein. If they see fit to provide us more money, we'll go farther. But I guess I'm available when we get to the question and answer period for factual questions, but I'll leave the politics to the politicians.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate that. And we will, I want to make sure we're going to have plenty of time for questions specifically for Tim. But now I want to turn it over to Dave Hauger. Dave probably knows more about this than any man on earth. Would you say? Do you think that's fair?
Absolutely. That's probably scary.
It is, isn't it? All right, go, Dave.
So, Representative Post, Representative Neerman, Representative Noble, Mayor Andrews, and other mayors, and particularly all of you who are here because this is your bypass, I'm delighted to be here. You wonder, what is my role? Almost 30 years ago, I thought we really ought to deal with the transportation issues in Newburgh and Dundee and the whole corridor and affected that. And we started a project with a lot of people got together and said, we need to address the traffic congestion for the benefit of the people of Newburgh and Dundee, but for the benefit of the whole corridor. And so this is really, this project is a lot of things to a lot of people. And one of the commitments we made is that we would all, as a part of this project, look out for each other. McMinnville doesn't get it all its way, Newburgh and Dundee doesn't get it all its way. It's been an incredible partnership between all of the communities in Dundee. And then let's talk about the region. But the thing that the county did is they said, we need to have an overriding body that can help put this project together. And they created what is called the Yamhill County Parkway Committee. Why Parkway? Because we didn't want it to be an I-5 freeway. We wanted it to be something more aesthetically pleasing that would fit into the landscape of the community, and that the communities would have a real opportunity to be involved and invested in terms of what it's gonna look like. So that's how it came. The Parkway Committee has been continuing. The commissioners in those days decided that they would name me the chair of that committee, and I think partly because I had this project going and they needed to have some way for the public to get control of me, and I think they would probably say they've been singularly unsuccessful at that. But, because, this is the people's project. And I want to tell you that people all the way from Newburgh to Dundee to McMinnville to Sheridan to Willamina to Lincoln County to Polk County to Tillamook County to Newport to Dundee or to Devil's Lake, and all of those areas have been supportive of this project. And that's why I say that it has become something much bigger than what we really are today, what we intended in the beginning. And, the amount of support we've gotten from our legislative delegation, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk just for a minute of who, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, Congressman Bonamici, Congressman DeFazio have absolutely been our champions in this whole thing. And I think we're all distressed a bit about the sanctuary issue, but you know what? We have never given up, and we've always worked our way through it. And as a result, we are where we are today. But it's been because of the support of the people. And I just want to give you one example. A long time ago, somebody said, well, show us how many, you really got a lot of people in support of this project. And so we passed out and started collecting petitions. And, a couple of petitions is not too much. But if I threw these in the air, there are almost 10,000 names on these petitions. So when I talk about this being the people's project, this project is happening because of all of you and thousands like you, not because a governmental entity started it, not because ODOT, not because of anybody else. So you need to put it in perspective. We will be successful on the rest of it when we continue to work together to make the people's project a success. If there were one thing I could do over, I would have never, ever had this called the Newburgh-Dundee bypass. Yeah, it bypasses Newburgh-Dundee. This is not a Newburgh-Dundee. This is the people's regional project, and we need to remember that. So I just say that. But in terms of what's happening, I want to tell you that one of the things that we know in moving this project forward is we have had a great partnership with the Department of Transportation. I can tell you lots of times I think people say that isn't the case, but starting with the Transportation Commission, with Director Garrett, and if you want to have a hero for the project, and he always blushes, and that's the guy sitting right there. When he was asked to come up with a project with a certain amount of money and make something happen, he got innovative on what they could do in design, connections, and a lot of other things. And so if you say, well, why did they do the fish hook, or why the connection this way, that way? Don't blame him. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have anything that you could go fix at both ends. So I can just tell you that we've asked Mr. Potter also to look at the piece from 219 up to Rex Hill, and they're also now looking at imagining and innovative ways to do it for less money, so that it isn't a $750 million project. And so great credit for that. When it comes to this, it's been an incredible partnership, but even beyond that, you say, how do you move the next piece forward? And so when you look at what Mr. Potter talked about from 219 up to Rex Hill, some things have come right. We are now in the phase of designing part of the first piece of that project, the Wilsonville issue. We resolved that thanks to the cooperation of a lot of great people. They're buying right away. We are now, and I want to pass out, and Representative Post asked me to make sure to bring this. There are a couple of groups that have been very helpful in moving this project forward, and I think you need to know that we've got a lot of friends and a lot of support. One of them is the Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation. That is a body that advises the Oregon Transportation Commission on projects, what they ought to build, and what's important. And so our group locally went to the area commission about a month ago and said, we really need your support in moving this project forward. We desperately need to start doing design and engineering on the next pieces so you can go get funding for those pieces. And so that was done very well, and we have a letter from to that commission, and I want to pass that to the members of legislature, but that was a huge step in getting us on the list, keeping us moving forward, and to get the support you need for a project to stay in line to be built in the Oregon highway planning process. So we are delighted with that. We've got some friends I have to mention, and that is our friends in Marion County. The folks in French Prairie, but more importantly, the Marion County Commissioners are very well aware of where we are in this project. They also understand the collateral consequences if you don't build the piece from 219 to Rex Hill, and you inadvertently divert a lot of traffic then across the bridge past Champoeg and over to Aurora Donald and through French Prairie, some of the spectacular farm country in the world. There are collateral consequences to that. So they have clearly stated, and Representative or Commissioner Brentano has gone with me meeting after meeting, talking about the need to finish this whole bypass. So we're delighted about that. Some things that's happened on the federal level, Congressman Bonamici and Senator Wyden were extraordinarily influential, along with the help of Peter DeFazio, Congressman DeFazio, in getting this project named as a high priority project at the federal level. There are only 3 in Oregon. That gets you way up the list in terms of a statement of how important this project is to be built. The Oregon Transportation Commission likewise has said that in their report on strategic investments, that they've identified this corridor as a priority corridor and recommended that the necessary investments be made to move us forward. All of these things happen because of a great amount of work on behalf of your People's Committee. So as we go down that list, I wanted to just make a couple of final thoughts about that. We need to complete the bypass. Mayor Andrews said that. And it isn't just because I want another life after 29 years. I did that. But I'll tell you what it is, and Mr. Potter said it. As you incrementally finish those sections, this whole bypass functions better and better and better. And you will get the most money out of that first $250 million investment when you finish it. Otherwise, you've got a $250 million investment that will never function like it ought to without making that all come together. So that is very important. The Bypass Committee, or Parkway Committee, at its last meeting a week ago, took formal action, as was requested by a number of legislators, in saying, okay, in this transportation package, what do you want? We've said, as a Parkway Committee, clear and unanimous, no exceptions. We want to finish the bypass. And we put, the project savings, a bunch of that money was your money. It was money that would have belonged to McMinnville, Newburgh, Dundee, the Yamhill County. The Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde are a great partner in this project. Literally and truly, millions of their money. And I can tell you that every one of those communities unanimously, every time the opportunity came up, said, take our project savings from that first phase, the money that Mr. Potter talked about for right-of-way and design, etc., and said, put it back in the project. It is that important. So this is an opportunity for us to move it forward. One of the questions that have been asked, and they talked about money, and somebody said $300 million. If you do some innovative things on interchanges, which are extraordinarily expensive, and you do some other things that Mr. Potter is at the top of the list, we believe you can cut down and you can finish from Newburgh, clear up at Rex Hill to Dayton for $300 million more. Now that's a give or take number, but seems like a lot of money. That is substantially less than if you look at the environmental study. It says all about what those costs would have been. And if ever you think the stars may be aligning, and you've got a Congress that's saying, we need to do a major infrastructure packages. We've got a state of Oregon that says, it is critical that we work on these things and we fund these projects. This is our opportunity. And that's what I have to say, and I would take you those numbers. I'm happy to answer questions about them. But I know one of the things that was the key presenter at the MWAC meeting was past Mayor of McMinnville, Present County Commissioner, Commissioner Olson, and I'd asked you to say a couple of minutes about how the perspective from the other end of the county.
Thank you, David, and I'd like to welcome the representatives of Yamhill County. And I'm Rick Olson, and I'm really speaking as the past mayor of McMinnville. I have 36 years in municipal government with the eight last years as mayor of McMinnville. I'm also now a Yamhill County Commissioner, but I'm really speaking as the past mayor of McMinnville and as a citizen of Yamhill County for the last 59 years and a citizen of the state of Oregon. And even though I might bring up a few things about economic development, I'm really going to leave that because I believe the other two Yamhill County Commissioners, or at least one of them, may want to talk about economic development. But for Representative Post, I really appreciate how he kicked this off and what he said, because I've been involved in the bypass about 10 to 12 years now, and there's several things I've learned in my political career. And this is about carbon loading and carbon credits. What I've learned is carbon credits and carbon loading does not create jobs. It does not build highways. And it does not make our communities more livable through good family wage paying jobs. So taking the political reality aside, it is very critical that the bypass be finished to completion. And you know, as you're aware, the need for a balanced and vibrant economic climate is always paramount in providing good living wage jobs. It's important to our safety of our communities. It allows us to raise and nurture our families, which is critical. Jobs must be created and maintained in manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. They must be created in tourism and agritourism. They must be created in service level. And they have to be created, more importantly, in innovation and technology. With the completion of the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, Region 2, I'm talking about everything from the I-5 corridor and Portland metropolitan area to the Central Coast, is well poised to take on that advantage. But in order to harness those opportunities, it's really of utmost importance that we all understand, and our legislative body understands, to have a modern and robust surface transportation vehicular system. That completion of the Newburgh-Dundee bypass is needed to realize what we all see now as a possibility. But once it's completed, it will no longer be a possibility. It'll be a predictive reality.